Hello, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today, we're going to be doing some inspired speaking, and by we, I mean I'm going to be doing some inspired speaking around a topic that I see so many people struggle with, especially women. And I really think you're going to relate to the topic. It's around duty to self and what we navigate in our everyday lives to stay connected to ourself and honoring what we believe is good for us. Now, even though we all experience this, it's very much an individual journey and one that I have also not been able to escape. If we all look at where we start from our childhoods into early adulthood, especially through the teenage years, we all have these instances where we've been placed in a situation where we were pressured to do something that we didn't want to do. And we all have really key examples of that. And sometimes that can be pressure from society. Sometimes it could be educational pressure, like going to a different university. Sometimes it could be pressure in our romantic relationships. Sometimes it can be family relationships, friends, etc. The list goes on. And we all have this moment where we clash with an outside stimulus and we find ourselves choosing between kind of just giving in and going with the flow and bending to that will, or maybe deciding that maybe another choice would be right for us, and we struggle to make that choice and stand up for ourselves. Now, the way that I see this come to me is usually in the form of clients coming to me and confiding in me during our reading and our session together, kind of what they're going through, their struggles, and that's the best opportunity for me to actually help the person, is when they're open and honest with me and they can feel free to share whatever they want to share with me, especially when it's during a psychic reading, because then the cards we use as a tool and we get into all the good guidance and things like that. But things that have been coming up recently with a lot of clients is the decision and the pressure to actually do what we want to do and be able to do that with confidence and being guilt-free about doing it. And when I mentioned at the beginning that I see this a lot in women, it's not only because 98% of my clients are women, and I feel so honored to serve in that space, is that being a woman myself, I see it all the time in my women relationships, in the women in my family, my friendships, is that so much pressure is put on women all the time that when we actually are given the option to do something that we really would rather not do, we'd rather be doing something else, we always feel this pressure to yield to the other person, do the nice thing, allowing ourselves to be guilt tripped into doing something that we don't want to do, and with varying consequences that can range from, where you prefer to eat, to the first time that you get a job, or any abuse situations, anything like that. There's always a coercion that goes on, especially in women's circles that I've seen, where we always want to do the right thing by the other person. And we're all born people pleasers. And we joke about it all the time, like, oh, she's such a people pleaser, blah, blah, blah. And I even find other women being hard on other people. And I don't think it's out of spite when we say these things about each other. I think it's just that we get frustrated when we see someone that we love always caving to another person's decisions and choices and not standing up for themselves. We kind of feel that frustration. And it's actually because we're rooting for the other person to be themselves and stand up for themselves. And what clients come tell me when we have our readings together, it's more often than not they're going through a life decision. Sometimes that's moving, sometimes that's career, sometimes that's financial, sometimes that's relationships. Whatever it must be, there's always this is right for one person, and maybe it's not right for me, but I'm having trouble choosing me and actually going in the direction that I want to go in, being guilt-free. And I'm the first to say that whenever you do choose yourself and actually get over the hump of, I'm not going to cave to this other person who's peer pressuring me into something, I'm going to choose myself. There's always going to be like some level of guilt there because it's programmed into us. And it's really important that we don't beat ourselves up over the guilt when we finally choose ourselves to do something. Like if we, for example, decide to not go to an event and take the afternoon or the weekend to ourselves and doing something that lights us up and brings us joy and benefits our own mental health, and someone else gets pissed about it, it's really easy to say who fucking cares. But the reality is that when you do choose yourself, there's always like some air of backlash of, oh, you were being difficult, or the other person's feelings are hurt, blah blah blah. And it's really hard to get over that hump. And that's why I tell my clients too, it's always most important that you take care of yourself first, because no one else is looking out for you and has your back like you have yourself. And everyone says, oh, like, what about your close friends and your family? Of course they love you and want what's best for you, but that's always like glared with their own version of events and things like that. So it's hard not to feel guilty when you choose yourself. And I will say that the majority of the wisdom and the teachings and guidance that come through during a reading that Spirit gives me to tell the client is the most important thing you could ever do is just be yourself and choose things that are good for you and don't get distracted by what other people are doing. And again, like, I'm going to repeat myself, but it's really easier said than done, especially when we have societal pressures and financial pressures and different expectations and things like that. But honestly, the last couple psychic readings I've had have all been about, like, what do I really want to do? And because I've gone years without listening to myself and honoring my feelings and pushing myself down, I now don't actually trust myself to make this decision. What if I make the wrong decision? Do I even have an intuition? What does the intuition feel like? How do I know this is the right choice? And my easiest and simplest answer for that is always like, what do you want to do? Like, have you sat in quiet and in nature and have just contemplated, like, what do I want to get from this? How do I want to feel at the end of this? Like, which choices are in front of me that I'm leaning towards? Is it choice 1 or choice 2? And there's always one choice. Whether the client realizes it in their reading or not, I realize it. Like 100% of the time, there's always one choice that's glaringly obvious that this person, when they talk about choice number 2 over choice number 1, they light up. You can see them relax in their seat and in the session. They talk not so calculated, they become more relaxed, and they become inspired. But whenever we turn to choice number 1, it's always caution and I'm not sure and uncertainty and negative energy, stagnant energy, passive aggressive energy, even some procrastinational energy. So even though it is hard to choose sometimes and you're not sure, like, oh, which one's which, especially if we haven't built that level of self-trust, building self-trust takes a lot of time, especially if you've gone years and years. And even if you've never had a role model in your life honor themselves in the way that we should already be honoring ourselves, it's really hard to distinguish, like, what does that even look like? And my best advice would be just turn inwards to yourself, turn off the TV, stop talking to everyone, stop getting everyone's opinions, especially stop writing those pros and con lists. And I'm going to call you out because I know there's someone that's listening to this that writes pros and cons lists for everything. That I'm telling you right now, that is not how to live a life, okay? It'd be great if you were in scientific research or data analysis, but that is not how you live your life. Your life is lived through emotion and intuition and spiritual inspiration, and you're not going to get that from a pros and cons list of choices. And, like, honestly, on the topic of pros and con list, like, you know, those little fortune catchers or the fortune tellers that we used to make out of paper when we were kids, and you would fold it and fold it, and it's like pick number 1 or pick number 2 or whatever number it is, and you would open and fold it to that number, and that releases a tab that releases another tab, and it's like follow this word, follow this number. I'm not sure what the name of it is now, but we used to do it as kids, and it would be like, oh, like tell your fortune, your like wish catcher or whatever. And like, if only life was that simple. But sometimes like we over analyze it and we over exaggerate it. Like, life isn't that simple, but it is at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, I think people, they think about the consequences always in a negative light. It's always like, well, what if this doesn't work out? What if I'm choosing wrong? What if I go bankrupt? What if I really hate the house I buy? What if I really hate where I move to? Like, what if I regret this? And no one's ever thinking about like, well, what if this all works out? What if the house becomes your dream house and you renovate it to perfection and it becomes amazing? Like, what if you plant the garden and the garden grows? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if you, and everyone's like, oh, well, what if I plant the garden and it dies and there's a drought and it rains and there's bugs and whatever? That doesn't stop you from planting a garden. They're always planting a garden in hopes of it working out. And like, I think that's like the biggest metaphor I'll probably make here. And I'm just inspiredly speaking through me. Like, I feel like I'm almost channeling right now when I say that, is because we're all looking for something that we like can't sense in the present moment. We're always looking to the future. And the other thing I'll say around this is that when you actually do get the opportunity to choose yourself, you're going to have people that are going to say, oh, well, that was selfish of them to do. Why did she do that? That doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. Listen, it's your life. And I know it's hard to turn out the haters and turn them off and not listen to them. But honestly, turn your phone off. Silence your notifications on certain people. I've had certain people on silent, I'm not even kidding, for almost 10 years on my social media, and through text and through phone calls and things like that, because I will engage with them when it's good for me. And it's because they haven't supported my decisions in the past when it was good for me. And it's not to say that, like, obviously if you make a choice that outright harms another person, like you steal from them or damage their property or, you know, like punch them or whatever, like obviously that's you perpetrating something negative onto someone else. Like you're going out of your way to do that. You choosing yourself in a situation where you have choice and the universe has choice, like, and someone else getting offended by that, I'm sorry, but like, grow up. We need to be in a place in society and get to an emotional place where we can zoom out and realize that everyone is doing the best that they can, okay? We are all out here suffering and struggling with something, but if you see someone choosing something for them that makes them happy, that maybe goes against the grain, you should say, wow, good for them. How inspiring of me to be able to witness this person live in their light, live in their truth, and do whatever the fuck that they want to do. And so often, like, those moments get overshadowed by, oh, well, the other decision would have been better and you're ruining your life and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't make any sense. If I had that choice, I wouldn't have done it. And you know what? Thank you so much for all of your negative opinions. And this is what you can tell yourself and tell your people who are hard on you when you make your decision. I appreciate your opinion. You know, it's my belief that even though everyone is entitled to an opinion, you actually don't need to say it. That's something we also need to learn in society. And just thank them for their time and just say, I will take this as a sign that you wish me the best, and just move on. And this is a pep talk to someone because I'm talking really fast and I'm actively channeling. So someone here needs to hear this. You need to do what's good for you and not think about the repercussions of how other people's feelings are going to feel, because let's be honest, you've spent your entire life thinking about other people, and there's been multiple times, and even right now, where you have felt by someone else that your feelings haven't mattered, and guess what, they've chose something for themselves and they got all the winnings. they came out on top because they chose something for themselves and they were strong enough to do it, and they didn't care what anyone else thought, and left you in the dust. We've all had that situation. So what I would love to see happen here is that you take the guidance and the advice and the energy that I've put forth in this episode and use it to motivate yourself. And you can start doing this very simply in your life. We can even go over like an intuition exercise later in the episode where I basically guide you through how to listen to your intuition, listen to your gut, and help you make decisions faster. And sometimes we can call it, I had a client the other day and for a psychic reading, and she said, I'm in, decision paralysis, where there's too many options, or I'm not sure about the options. And because both of these decisions, I have both of these two choices have large repercussions and large things that they're going to kick off into motion. They're such big choices that I can't make a choice, and I find myself paralyzed. And I think it could also be called like decision fatigue, where we've had to make so many decisions in our life that if we have to make one more choice, like we're just going to burn ourselves out. But I think it's called, analysis paralysis. That's what it's called. These are all therapy terms. You're just benefiting from the years of therapy that I've gone through and life lessons books and self-help care that I've gone through. But I also suffer from analysis paralysis big time. And whenever I do that, it's because usually I'm trying to please another person in some aspect of this scenario. So if you haven't considered that, like, why can't I make a decision? So for example, like my analysis paralysis for literally years is, do I have a big wedding or do I elope? And I was in analysis paralysis. I would be making the pros and cons list, which I just shit on earlier. And I shit on it because it's not very helpful. And well, for me, it isn't. For some people, it can be, but try not to do it. Try to get out of your head and get out of the data and get back into your feelings to make that choice. But mine was, do I have a big wedding? Why do I want to have a big wedding? And do I elope? Why do I want to elope? Etc., etc. And I couldn't make a decision to save my life. Luckily for me, I found a third option. I found a escape door, a third door that I decided to walk through, and it was like literally the best decision ever. I realized that I actually didn't even need to choose. Like, there's always another decision that can come out of this that we haven't considered. And again, like a lot of times, like the decision paralysis is because like there's someone else's emotions are, at stake here. Could be your children, could be your family, could be your friends. How does my decision impact other people? Because I know it will. And trying to make decisions with other people in mind is very difficult. I'm not sugarcoating it. It is very difficult. And one of the client situations that I'm thinking of, and I'll kind of leave out the names and the details, obviously, because confidentiality is very important to me. But I also believe that like sharing some of the wisdom and insights and scenarios that we find ourselves in a reading, I think that sharing the basis of that is so helpful for other people, because people realize that they're not alone, and they realize that other people are going through the same situations that they're going through. And because life can be really lonely, but that's another topic for another podcast. But the situation that I'm thinking of is I had a client come to me for a psychic reading, I believe, and they were contemplating whether or not they should basically go back to school. And this person really was between a rock and a hard place. And the thought process was, if I do go back to school, how does that impact like my family, my finances, things like that? All logical questions, obviously. And then the other fact was, well, maybe I'm not sure what I even want to do. Do I stick with working? How does that benefit me? How does that benefit my family? Maybe that's the easier route to go. And then especially with education, like, is is it useless to go back to school? Even though I'm really passionate about this topic, like, is that the right decision to do? And listen, we spent the whole reading chatting with each other, and I was pulling tarot cards, I was pulling oracle cards, I was doing inspired speaking, I was channeling. I was trying to give as much guidance and wisdom as I could. And even in that reading, we did go through an exercise where I guided them through how to quiet their mind really quickly, how to visualize putting the frustrations and the logic and getting out of the analysis paralysis, putting that into a mental image box, and then just feeling into their own body and their own emotions when they think about going back to school versus staying in the job that they were in. And, sometimes revelation comes from these really simple exercises, and sometimes you're like, holy shit, that answer was so clear to me when I asked. Like, I feel so inspired and it feels so right in my body. This is the choice and I'm going to honor it, whatever the choice may be, whatever the decision. And sometimes like it takes more than a few tries to like go inward and quiet the mind. But anyway, at the end of the reading, I think I ended up pulling, I would say 9 or 10 cards, and I just kept pulling card after card. And it was like, what situation are we in? How did we get in this situation? How do we feel in this situation? The choice card came up a lot. The duality, the language of duality comes up a lot in tarot anyway, but choices come up a lot in tarot, and they came up a lot in this reading, I'll tell you that. And all these tarot cards were supported by oracle cards, and I always joke and say oracle cards are tarot light. They're generally kind of like less descript, less to the point. They can be kind of like the lighter version of tarot, where a tarot is like pinpoints the pressure point and pushes on it, tarot can humble you really quickly, and that's why I love tarot, because it's a very honest deck. There's nowhere to hide in tarot. No, really, interpretation, you can interpret the cards however you want, but really, like, there's a certain card that means a certain something, and that's the way it goes. So at the end of the reading, I had all these cards pulled out in front of me, and all of them had to do with self-confidence, self-choice, feeling lost, believing in yourself, doing what you want to do, honoring yourself. And that all has to do with duty to self. And this entire topic that we've been talking about is staying in your own confidence, choosing what you want to do and having the courage to do it. And all of those cards was just like repeating this message over and over and over again, and to where I just couldn't get around it. And I had to say to the client, this is your deck. This deck is speaking, in my opinion, directly towards you. There's really light interpretation here. It's very direct, and these cards are telling you that you need to make the choice that you feel best in, no matter the consequences. And I know that's hard to do when you have family and financials, etc. I understand that. I've been there. Listen, I've jumped career so many times. I actually have a science degree I'm currently not using. That's, again, different episode, different story. But we've all been there, even me. And it takes extreme courage to be yourself and do the things that you want to do. And the cards were just telling her, it's time. And the cards were actually saying to me and told me a story and gave her insight, but it gave me a lot of insight to this person's life, where they have felt maybe pushed aside, and have lived their life very selflessly and for other people, especially if you have children. Obviously, I don't currently, but I can only imagine the sacrifices that you go through in your own life. But it really was time to choose themselves and choose what lights them up and makes them happy. And that's the beauty of having a reading with someone, or having a reading with me, or whoever your reader is that it's so important that the integrity of the reading is not clouded by judgment, and the air is open for advice and guidance and feelings. Because some people come to me in these readings very emotional. They're at sometimes they're at rock bottom, and they don't know where else to turn. So now they'll try anything. And maybe they haven't been into spirituality or mediums or readers or psychics and tarot cards and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they don't know the terms, but they know that they need guidance from someone else that doesn't know their situation, doesn't know them at all. The only thing that I know about my clients is like their first name when they book. And if that like freaks you out and you're like, oh, like I don't want to use my real name, lie. Literally, I'm telling you right now, if you want unbiased guidance, which I prefer, I don't want to know anything about my clients, and it screws me up when I know anything about anyone, which is why I can't read friends or family. And when I do, it's the reading always sucks. You know what I mean? Because I'm super biased. I know a lot about these people who I'm close to, and I am not the reader for them. And I always read best when I don't know the person at all. I couldn't pick the person out from a crowd, nothing. So if you're looking for like the unbiased guidance, especially if you're making a choice in your life and you don't know where to turn, and sometimes we have to hit rock bottom, let's be real. We have to hit rock bottom before we can even come to the realization that, oh, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Right. There has to be light at the end of the tunnel because God damn it can't get any worse. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, like, if you want an unbiased reading, and that's always the reading you should get, like this, the reader should never know anything really about you. Just lie about your first and last name on the booking. I don't care. I will ask you your real first and last name when you come to a reading with me because our names all have energy and I use it on my little scratch pad with my pen and paper. But that's it, because I read your energy and your situation, and the cards help me do that, especially when we're doing psychic work and inspired speaking and intuitive guidance and all those good stuff. So that's a long story, but I hope you get the point that there are resources out there if you are in analysis paralysis, and if you are looking to build trust. It's my goal, and it's basically my inspiration is to release podcasts with tips and ideas and thought-provoking scenarios that I can share with you that reflects back onto your own life, and like how can you look at your life differently and how can you live it better and easier and less stressful. One of the last things I'll leave you with here is that whenever you choose something that is right for you, you'll know it in your body. Your mind doesn't have time to react. It's the same thing when people are like, oh, I followed my intuition, I followed my sixth sense. Same thing. When something happens to you and you feel it in your body that this resonates and this is right and this feels safe and this feels aligned, listen to your body. Your mind is full of chatter, like chatter that's distracting you. Your mind is always thinking. That's why so many people have trouble meditating, and that's why I literally have classes and courses that speak to helping people meditate. And it's because our mind is full of chatter and we have forgotten how to listen to our bodies and how to make decisions for ourselves and doing what's right for ourselves. We, as a society, are chronically lost and depleted in our self-trust and our lack of abilities to listen to ourselves and honor our own feelings. So my best advice here would be, once you're done listening to this podcast, or whenever you have time, or whenever you have a decision, I want you to be in a place where you won't be disturbed and you won't be quiet, and probably carve out like 20 minutes, half an hour, at least, even more. If you like get emotional, like sit with those feelings and honor those feelings, especially if it's a big life choice. These are the times when you kind of have to get real with yourself and look for guidance inward and upward, up to spirit too. And you don't have to be spiritual to do this. Like this, every human should be able to trust themselves. So what I want you to do is be in a place where you won't be disturbed. I want you to get comfortable sitting, laying down with a blanket, with a pet, whatever. And slowly breathe in and out, and just take a time to actually pay attention to like the breath going in, how it feels going out, and just like relaxing. You can even listen to some like beautiful music, lyric. Non-lyric is my favorite, just because again, the mind chatter. I don't want to start singing Ariana Grande when I'm trying to listen to my intuition here. your favorite music that is like relaxing, very safe. I really like instrumental music, cello, harp, um, oh my gosh, what's the other one? Drums. I'm really into drums right now. Turn on a playlist, be in a situation where you won't be disturbed, and just think of the question, should I do this or do that? And just sit and wait and see how it makes you feel in your body. Like, you're not waiting for the voice of God to come down on you, which it might. There's been very many scenarios that I have had spiritual encounters when I am doing these types of exercises, but we're not looking for that. If that comes through, bonus. You know what I'm saying? Wow, you just had an amazing experience with spirit, but we're looking to build a relationship with yourself. So I want you to sit in that contemplation. And I don't want you to do a pros and cons list, girl. I don't want you to have a pen and paper, close your eyes, and just sit in a relaxed and submissive and surrender state. It's very important. We're taking the ego out of the equation. I know that's difficult for people. You know, what is the ego? The ego is basically like your own. If we say, so for example, if we say someone who's like super cocky and kind of full of themselves and, oh, that person has a huge ego, they're so full of themselves. That's not the true representation of that person. That is kind of like a filter that's on that soul. So what I want you to do is just like tune in. And you know, these are all big words, so stay with me. Tune into this place, tune into yourself, go back to your breathing, go back to your comfortable place. And if you get lost, just listen to the music, focus on the music. That's why my personal is non-lyrical music, because I'm not listening to the message of the song that someone is singing. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to listen to ourselves, which is why non-lyrical music is the way to go. And depending on the instrument and how it sounds and the frequencies, like these can all invoke and stir up emotions inside of you that maybe you've had locked. And maybe that's why you can't make a decision, or you struggle to make a decision, or you feel guilty about making a certain decision. You know, that music will help you, your energy body kind of flow through it. And I'll release other episodes on the energy body. Huge topic. Love the energy body. It's the main way I work. But once you've sat in silence and you contemplated this choice, you're going to feel it in your body. And I want you to pay attention to your body and your solar plexus, right below your chest bone, right above your stomach, right in that, literally your center of gravity. It's called your solar plexus. And it's one of the chakra energies that's aligned in your body. And this is where you're going to feel your inner truth. This is where your sixth sense lies. This is where your natural instincts occur. You know, let's say like, oh, I felt it in my gut, it just wasn't right. That's the saying that has to do with your solar plexus. So right below your chest bone, right above your stomach, right in that middle center area. And just breathe into it very calmly. We're not going to judge ourselves. If nothing comes to you and you still don't have clarity around this, guess what? You didn't surrender enough. And you can always go back and do this. And I guarantee you, the more that you surrender and just realize that I can't make the decision, I need help to make it, then that's when you'll get the best guidance. Like anytime I've ever done this and I've come from like an I know what's best and what about this and what about that, take logic and your ego out of it. Listen to your body. If I did choice number 1, how does that instantly make me feel? Do I feel a retraction in my body? Do I feel kind of like, ugh, like that's kind of gross? Or how do I feel about choice number 2? Wow, wouldn't that be amazing? That would just be the dream. You know what I mean? So we're looking for an expansion or a retraction with these 2 questions. And like I said, don't be hard on yourself and don't say, oh, well, I'm not getting anything. Like this is, you know, kind of bullshit. It's not bullshit. You just need to try again. And the more you practice and the more that you actually take the time and consideration to tune into your own body and turn inward for a choice, the more natural it's going to be for you to be in these weird scenarios of choice, and you'll just start tuning in to your own energy body automatically. It will just be at that point, if you've done it over and over and over again, and it's going to take a lot of time to do this, you basically have to relearn how to do it if you want to do it automatically. But it is possible, and it has guided me through some fantastic opportunities in my life. And as long as you're working in alignment, like you'll be fine. You know, that saying like the universe has your back. It will, but you just need to accept whatever that choice is that you get in this little meditation. So we traveled a long ways between now and the beginning of this podcast. We had a lot of inspired speaking. We talked about psychic readings. We talked about intuition. We talked about the difficulty of choice, especially when you want to honor your own feelings and put your own feelings first. And obviously, this is a huge topic. There are so many self-help books and other resources that go into this, because really it's like the human condition of choice, right? Sometimes when we have so many choices, we get into that analysis paralysis, like we had mentioned earlier in the podcast. But I mean, I anticipate this is like part 1 to a several part series where we dive into boundaries, choosing what you want, the solo journey of living with that choice and standing on your own, even when others disagree with you, the courage that it takes to actually do that, no matter how big or small the decision, as long as it's aligned with you and your own good, you'll be fine. And I know it's scary, but you'll be fine, I promise. This is the episode that I'm going to title this as it's called Duty to Self. And like I said, we have arrived at the end of the episode, but feel free to come back and listen to this episode anytime you need a high five or a helping hand or a pep talk. I kind of got a little pep talky earlier, but that's great because that means that someone listening to this is going to benefit from it. And I only get this hyped up and excited about topics that I give a shit about. And I care about this topic and I care about you. And I hope you go and try that little intuition exercise that I had spoken about. If you have any questions, you can also always just send me a message on social media. I'm at The Garden Medium on both Facebook and Instagram. My website is thegardenmedium.com. You can also send me an email anytime with questions or questions about like resources and things like that. Or if you have an idea for a topic that I can speak about to share lessons with you and inspired speaking, I would love to do that. My email is thegardenmedium@gmail.com. Beware of scammers, people. Block these people. I will never message you outright for a reading. You always need to come to me, and that's how you decide if someone's a scammer or not, because I'm not fishing. I just am who I am, and you're either attracted to me or not. You're either attracted to my services or not. Okay, well, I leave you with that. Try the exercise, and if you have and you were successful or not, please let me know. I'd love to help you out. And it's something that I've learned how to do for myself over years and years of always finding myself running into the wrong wall and never being able to find a door to the choices that I've made, and always feeling stuck in that analysis paralysis, like I said earlier. So I love you guys, and thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great day. And remember that you need to look after yourself. You need to look out for yourself. And from here on out, from you listening to this episode, from start to finish, let me tell you, you have already taken a step into trusting yourself and educating yourself and viewing things and choices and decisions and other people and yourself differently in your life, literally just by listening to it. And that's how easy it is. That's how uncomplicated it can be. Okay? Take care.